All right, let's dive into the world of trains. We've got a whole stack of articles here about the latest and greatest in rail technology. Looks like we've got some exciting stuff to unpack.
Yeah, it's amazing to see the global push for a greener and more efficient rail network.
Definitely. And speaking of efficiency, let's start with Northern Rail over in the UK. They're really trying to crack the code on saving fuel.
And they're doing it in an interesting way. They've partnered up with tech companies, which isn't that surprising, but what's really cool is they're also working with Auticon.
Otacon.
Yeah, they're an organization that employs autistic adults. In this case, they've brought in some talented data scientists to help Northern Rail develop a model for optimal speed and braking patterns for their trains.
Sounds like a fuel efficiency playbook for train drivers.
Exactly. Early tests on the Middlesbrough to Whitby line show it could reduce fuel consumption and CO2 emissions by 7%.
That's significant.
Oh, absolutely. Especially when you consider Northern Rail's annual fuel bill is somewhere around 50 million pounds.
hmm
Even a small percentage shaved off of that is huge.
Wow, that's a lot of savings. So what's next for this fuel-saving mission?
Well, it looks like Northern Rail is expanding these tests to 6 routes in northeast England. It's all part of their plan to completely ditch diesel trains by 2040.
Ambitious. It
Mhm.
seems like sustainability is the name of the game across the entire rail industry.
Definitely. And it's not just about fuel. The materials used in rail infrastructure play a big role, too, which leads us to our next story. The UK's HS2 project. They're building 2 massive viaducts with something called a double composite design.
Double composite.
hmm
For those of us who haven't studied engineering, what does that even mean and why is it important?
It's actually pretty simple. Basically, they're sandwiching a steel beam between layers of reinforced concrete. This creates a box-like structure that's incredibly strong, but uses much less material than traditional designs.
The less material equals less carbon emissions during manufacturing, right?
You got it. Both concrete and steel production are carbon-intensive processes, so using less of them is a win for the environment.
Makes sense. And we're not talking about small structures here. The Westbury Viaduct is over 320 meters long.
It's a massive undertaking for sure. And the really cool thing is that this double composite design could be used in other projects too. If it works well for these viaducts, we might see a ripple effect of more sustainable construction across the UK.
That would be fantastic. It's great to see these kinds of innovations spreading. But let's be honest, innovation isn't always smooth sailing, is it? Speaking of projects that haven't quite gone to plan, let's head over to France. They've been trying to build a high-speed rail link between Paris and Charles de Gaulle Airport, and, well, it's facing some hurdles,
Yeah, the CDG Express has had a bit of a bumpy ride so far.
to say the least. They originally wanted it ready for the 2024 Olympics, but now it's looking like 2027 at the earliest. What's causing all these delays?
It's a mix of things, really. They've had legal challenges, and of course, trying to integrate new infrastructure with existing lines always throws up unexpected problems. Plus, the pandemic didn't help, did it?
No, not at all. And it's not just the delays causing a stir. There's been some controversy around the project itself
Yeah, some critics are calling it a train for the rich.
because of the planned premium fares, right?
Yeah,
And they argue that it's taking resources away from improving suburban rail services.
that's right. There are concerns that it's prioritizing the needs of tourists and business travelers over everyday commuters.
So it's a complicated issue with no easy answers.
It is. But it's worth remembering why the project was proposed in the first place. The RER Line B, which currently connects the airport to Paris, is extremely overcrowded, especially during peak hours. The CDG Express is an attempt to alleviate some of that pressure.
So it's a bit of a balancing act, trying to weigh up the needs of different groups of passengers.
Exactly. And speaking of balancing acts, let's move on to a company that's trying to find the right balance for sustainable train operations.
Okay, what do we got?
Well, this one's really interesting. A company called Vet Rail in Sweden is making some serious moves towards using hydrogen power.
Now, this is exciting. Hydrogen trains. Tell me more.
So Vate Rail is all in on decarbonizing their shunting operations.
And just for our listeners who might not be familiar with the term shunting, it's basically moving trains around within a railway yard, often using those diesel engines. So it's a prime target for a green makeover.
Absolutely, and that's exactly what Vate Rail is doing. They've partnered up with PESA, a Polish manufacturer, to bring in a hydrogen-powered shunting locomotive.
Wow, so it's not just a pipe dream. Are they actually building this thing?
They are. The prototype's already been tested, and they want to have it up and running in Sweden within 2 years.
That's a pretty tight timeline. Fate Rail seems serious about this hydrogen technology.
They are. They've even said they want to be the greenest rail carrier in Sweden.
That's a bold ambition.
It is. but it shows their commitment to a greener future for rail transport.
I like their style. All right, let's hop back over to the UK now for a final look at what's happening on their railways. A bit of a mixed bag of news this time, with some good news for holiday travelers, but also some ongoing challenges.
Sounds about right for the UK rail system. Let's start with the good news, shall we? Right, the good news. Avanti West Coast is releasing their early bird Christmas train tickets, and get this, no peak restrictions this year.
Oh, that's a nice Christmas present. Those peak fares can really add up, especially during the holiday season. So what are we looking at price-wise?
Let's see, a standard class single to or from London will cost you about £16 to Birmingham, £25 to Liverpool, £36.50 to Manchester, and £46 to Glasgow.
Not too bad at all. Although knowing the UK rail system, there's probably a catch.
Well, there is a tiny snag. Network Rail has planned engineering works between December 23rd and January 4th.
Ah, of course. The annual holiday engineering works. Always seems to coincide with the busiest travel period. But hey, maybe it's a sign to just stay put and enjoy the festivities at home this year, or brave the roads.
Or maybe just plan and book early. But speaking of challenges, there's another issue facing UK railways right now. Transport campaigners are calling for a rail fare freeze.
Makes sense. With the cost of living rising, making public transport more affordable seems like a no-brainer.
Exactly. They're arguing that public transport should be a viable alternative to driving, especially given that motorists have enjoyed a 14-year freeze on fuel duty.
It's a good point. It's all about finding a balance, right? Speaking of finding a balance, we've talked about fuel efficiency and hydrogen power, but what about the trains themselves? Are there any companies out there really innovating in train manufacturing?
There are. One company that's caught my eye is Stadler. They're really optimistic about the UK market, especially with this move away from diesel.
Okay, I'm listening. What's their angle?
They're all about what they call bimode and trimode trains.
Trimo, that sounds intense.
It's actually quite clever. These trains can switch between diesel, electric, and even battery power, so they're ready for whatever the UK's rail infrastructure throws at them.
So they're not waiting around for the whole network to be electrified. They're providing a solution for right now.
Precisely. They've already delivered these types of trains for Merseyrail, Greater Anglia, and Transport for Wales.
Wow. So they're putting their money where their mouth is.
They are. They truly believe that battery electric trains are crucial, especially in bridging the gap while wider electrification plans are rolled out.
It's a practical approach. Make the trains greener now and continue improving the infrastructure as you go. It's great to see that kind of proactive thinking. Well, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, haven't we? From fuel-saving missions and hydrogen-powered locomotives to innovative construction methods and the ever-present challenges of large-scale projects, the future of rail is certainly full of surprises.
It certainly is. But one thing's for sure, the drive towards a greener, more efficient, and environmentally responsible rail system is gaining momentum. And it's not just about making the trains themselves greener, it's about using technology to make the entire rail operation smarter and more sustainable.
Absolutely. And with companies like Stadler pushing the boundaries of train technology and advocating for solutions that work right now, it feels like you're on the right track.
I agree. The future of rail is full of possibilities.
It is. Now the question is, will these advancements be enough to convince people to choose the train over their cars? Only time will tell. That's all the time we have for today's deep dive. Thanks for joining us on this journey into the future of rail travel. Until next time, keep those wheels turning.